The whole challenge felt utterly relentless. It's the getting out of bed every single day, no matter what the weather, no matter where you are in the world, no matter what you're doing that day, no matter what you feel like on your cancer treatment, you've got to get up and go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Running Tales podcast. It's 2023, can you believe it? And we're here at the start of series 3 of Running Tales. I'm Craig Lewis, and the voice you just heard there was this week's guest, Tony Collier. Now, regular listeners will know that we've had Tony on fairly recently. He was with us towards the end of last year for Series 2, Episode 26. In short, Tony was a sub-elite runner with all 6 marathon majors behind him and the Comrades Ultra Marathon under his belt as well. Before, out of the blue, he was diagnosed with terminal prostate cancer. Now, since that diagnosis, Tony has certainly not stopped running. He's completed a 2-day ultra, as well as a number of other challenges to raise money for various charities. Tony also believes that running has helped him to live longer, allowing his cancer treatment to work to the best of its ability. Go back and have a listen if you want to hear Tony's full story. But today we'll be concentrating on a particular element of that. His latest challenge he's just finished, raising more than £20,000 for the Move charity by running at least 5 kilometres every day throughout 2022. Now, just before we go any further with Tony's story, I wanted to take a moment to ask you, all of our wonderful listeners, to take some time out to give us a review and a rating wherever you may listen to this podcast. Positive reviews mean Running Tales gets seen by a wider audience. The more reviews we get, then the more people get to listen to the inspiring stories of our guests. Also, if you want to see and hear more of our content, then please be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Running Tales Pod, on Facebook, where our page is called Running Tales, quite simply, or to check out our YouTube channel at Running Tales Pod. Thanks as ever for all of our support. Really keen now to get on with Tony Collier's story. That's what we're all here for. I started off by asking him what it was like to run 5 kilometres every day in 2022, whatever the weather was like, whatever he felt like in the morning.
Well, it was at least 5 kilometres every day. It was actually averaging nearer to 4 miles. The feeling at the end was absolute elation, because the whole challenge felt utterly relentless. It's the getting out of bed every single day, and no matter what the weather, no matter where you are in the world, no matter what you're doing that day, no matter what you feel like on your cancer treatment, you've got to get up and go. And training through the range of temperatures from plus 35 centigrade to minus 10, as you can imagine, with everything in between. Yeah, it was pretty amazing this week. It was really nice to get it finished.
And before we cover over one or two of those issues you mentioned there, one or two of the challenges, remind everyone why you were doing this and who you were raising money for.
Okay, so I was doing it to raise money for the Move charity, who are behind 5K Your Way, which is an exercise initiative linked to parkrun, 85 parkruns across the UK. But Move also support teenagers and young adults living with cancer to get moving again post their treatment. And there was one amazing story that I heard from one of the CAN rehab trainers, personal trainers, who said basically she'd been working with this young man who'd lost his leg to cancer, and he'd basically given up on exercise, and they got him through the program. And he said he felt completely empowered and reinvigorated by it. And so all the way through the 365 days, thoughts about kids like that were on my mind. And it was an incredible motivation to get out and do it. From a personal perspective, I actually believe that staying fit is really good for our physical and mental well-being, particularly for people living with cancer. And it's now, I think, pretty much a given that exercise is really important for people living with cancer. So for me, it's a twofold thing, really. It was a personal gain, but also then a great gain for the charity.
The Move charity is really wonderful. My wife, Michelle, who people who listen to the podcast regularly will know has done episodes on her own and with me in the past, is a ambassador for 5K Your Way at the Northampton Park Run. She's had messages from the people who've ran there saying it just got them through a really hard day on a particular time, or it made them feel like they were doing something, inverted commas, normal, something that they did before their diagnosis. It's a sort of really obvious question that people like me ask to people like you, but how big a boost is it to those people who can go out and do that 5K at a park run after having a cancer diagnosis or while going through their treatment?
I can tell you an amazing story about the launch of my 5K Your Way at Wilmslow Park Run, which is in Cheshire East. There was I'd actually, to try and sort of promote the 5K Your Way, I'd contacted nearly every cancer professional I could get to know, and actually met them for coffee and sort of taught them through what we were going to do, and then given them all flyers. And one of these guys was a lung cancer specialist in Greater Manchester, and he put the flyer up in his clinic. And I got a message about 3 months later, and it's from this lady. She said, for the last 3 months, she said, I could barely move. I could barely get out of bed. But every single day, my aim was to get to do 5K Your Way at the end of May. And she said, I'd get out of bed and I'd force myself to walk across the kitchen. And then the following day, it was around the kitchen. And then the following day, it was 100 yards outside. And she said, I've been completely, utterly motivated to get fitter so I can do 5K Your Way and do the park run. So for me, that was, I think, a brilliant, brilliant example of people it helps. And then another one of my 5K Your Way regulars has just been in the Christie for 2 weeks, having a new form of immunotherapy in a trial. And I didn't expect to see her at the December 5K Your Way, but there she was. She turned up, she walked, she was about 10, 15 minutes slower than she normally was, but she finished. And at the end of it, she looked absolutely shattered, but she said, I feel so good. I feel so good. You know, that's what it does.
The other thing is there are people going through the treatment who maybe aren't well enough at that particular moment to do the 5K, but they can get involved in the volunteering and all that sort of stuff as well, can't they?
Yeah, we encourage people to do it their way. So most of the participants at Wilmslow walk, which is great. But we have one guy who comes nearly every month, and he does it in 23 minutes. So he's quite a fast runner. But then we had, most of ours walk, and we have a few people who jog, and it's fine. But then we say to them, Wilmslow Park runs a 2-lapper. If you can't do 2 laps, do 1. If you can't do any, just turn up and volunteer and help at park run. And what we're trying to do is break the social isolation of a cancer diagnosis, because our aim after we've done the 5K is to go to the local cafe for a coffee and become a cancer support group. And we don't talk about cancer. We actually talk about life and living and the joy of living. And for me, that's what it's all about. It's about talking about the joy of living and all the experiences that we share. And it's very rare we talk about cancer. We might ask each other, how are you doing? But that's about it, really. Then you get on and chat. It's wonderful.
Talking about the joy of living, how many times out of the 365 times did you feel joyous before going out on your runs?
Feeling joyous, probably about 10. Yeah. Oh God, it was. There was just some days where, some days where I just didn't want to get out of bed, and my cancer treatment gives me massive fatigue, and it's normally at its worst at around 9 o'clock. And so what I would generally do is go and lie in the bed at 9 o'clock for 20 minutes. I wouldn't go to sleep because I'm not tired. It's just fatigue. It's very different to tiredness. But at sort of 20 past 9, I force myself to put my running shoes on and I get out through the door, do my 5K or a bit more, whichever I'm doing that day. And when I get back, the veil of fatigue's lifted and I feel incredible, the endorphin rush. And some of them, some runs I had to stop and walk 3 or 4 times. Some I had to stop and just have a rest 3 or 4 times. And then others I'd sail around. My fastest time, actually, it was a really interesting one because my fastest time was 26 minutes. And it was running around the track at the local grammar school because they'd invited me to go and do 5K with them. I got lapped by about 4 11-year-olds 3 times while I was doing 5K. But it was the hottest day, I think one of the hottest days in the summer and my fastest time because I was trying to chase these young kids around. But that's the one day I felt exceptional and it went really well. And some days I'd feel good, I could tell, I think within about 100 metres, I could tell what sort of day it was going to be, If I got to the top of the road, then I felt rubbish, it was like, yeah, this is going to be a bad one today. And if I got to the top of the road and felt all right, I get to 800 metres and think, well, actually, I might get under 30 minutes here. So, every day was different. Yeah, it was just what a journey.
Yeah, and was the hardest thing perhaps how you felt yourself in the morning when you get up because of what you're going through, rather than perhaps all the other things which would be a natural challenge to everyone, such as the weather conditions?
Yeah, it was predominantly because of my treatment, which removes testosterone. So I've got no male hormone. So without male hormone, you suffer reduced muscle mass. So that makes running a lot harder. You also gain weight. You have reduced bone density and hot flushes, and I've got man boobs, so I've got my trainer bra on, and so yeah, I take my cancer treatment at 7 in the morning, and then about 9 o'clock, this sort of wall of fatigue hits. And 8 o'clock with food, I take a steroid, and that sort of kicks in a little bit later in the morning, gives me a little bit of a boost. So I've been waiting until sort of 9:30, 9:45 to give the steroid a chance to kick in. So yeah, it's all about really how I feel on the day because of the treatment, really. Yeah. And then of course, 8 times a year I have treatment either at my GP's or at the Christie. And for 3 or 4 days after that, I'm not for 6. But I got out and did it every day.
Incredible. Tell everyone about Move with Tony Day, which was how you finished it all off, which seemed to really gain a lot of momentum at the end.
Yeah, I mean, we came up with this idea, what we're going to do for the final day. And it was on the 3rd of January. And the reason for that was back in July, I was away on holiday and had a bit of a cold. And when I got back, I was full of catarrh, and I thought, I'm going to the GP's that day. So I thought, I better do a COVID test just in case. Anyway, the COVID test was mad positive. And then the following day was negative, and the following day was negative. So I missed those 3 days, but I added them on at the end. So I still did 365. So we finished on the 3rd of January, and we thought, well, what can we do to make it a big thing? So we came up with this idea of Move with Tony. And I've got friends in the running community all over the world. They picked up on the story. I promoted it. And we had people in Thailand, South Africa, America, Australia, across Europe, and obviously the UK, all going out and doing 5K their way, whether it be run, walk, jog, swim, ride, or whatever, and doing it all on the same day, and then just using the hashtag Move with Tony. And on my final day, we went to the start of the park run at Wilmslow, and about 70 friends and family turned up to do the final day with me. And it was a bit mental because BBC picked up on it, ITV picked up on it, Sky News picked up on it, and I did interviews for all of them. I did a live interview on Granada TV. That was terrifying, really scary. The hottest studio on record. I looked like a Belisha beacon because of the hot flushes and hot sweats from my treatment. So yeah, it was honestly, it was brilliant. And the social media coverage, which I didn't want it to be about me, which is why I use the word move. But the Move charity and 5K Your Way got so much publicity that day. It was unbelievable. And then, of course, last night they were on the One Show. I don't know if you've seen the One Show last night.
I haven't seen it. I didn't realise that.
Okay, yeah, they were on the One Show. It's the one where they surprise people. And so they
so just quickly, Tony, for people listening, this is being recorded on Friday, January the 6th. By the time it goes out, it'll be next Tuesday. So when we talk about last night, it's on Thursday, the 5th of January. If people want to go back and catch that One Show.
On the One Show, they surprised Lucy Gossage, the founder, and Lizzie Paddock from Nottingham 5K Your Way with Jess Ennis. Yeah, so and then it was one of those. It's the thank you slot on a Thursday evening. So it was amazing. It was very emotional, and of course after the week of publicity that I generated, it was great to see them getting some publicity as well. So yeah, it's been a brilliant week for promoting 5K Your Way and Move.
And has that seen a knock-on effect on your fundraising? Has a lot more money come in these last few days and weeks?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, going back to sort of mid-November, I was pushing up towards £10,000, including gift aid. It's doubled. It's now just gone over £20,000, including gift aid. And I didn't do the challenge particularly to raise money, and I set myself because I knew it was difficult. Cost of living. I'd been fundraising for the previous 2 years for prostate cancer and for Macmillan. And I just thought this is going to be really hard. So I set myself a target of £1,000 and I'd gone through that in about a week. And then as we got nearer to the end, it just snowballed. I got some incredible donations. The biggest was 1,000. The smallest was £2. Everyone counted just as much. So yeah, it's just over £20,000, which is 20 times what I set out to raise. And just to put that in context, Move's budget is 4 times that annual budget. So it's a quarter of their annual budget. So that's how much it would mean to them.
Oh, that's incredible. Well done you, and well done everyone who donated along the way. How important do you think running has become as a thing to raise money for charities? I'm thinking not only the efforts that you've done now, but we've seen in the last week Gary McKee, who we've spoken to on here, and I know you know Gary, who raised an incredible £1 million for cancer charities, and that went crazy in the last few days. And these challenges now, we see it at the London Marathon, don't we, every year, that they're making such a huge difference to really important charities.
I think the best way to sort of outline the importance of running fundraising challenges is during the pandemic when we had lockdowns, everything got cancelled. Charity fundraising dropped by something like a third. And I think Cancer Research UK lost 300 million in fundraising that year. That had a massive knock-on effect because without the fundraising, that means less research is being done. Less research for people like me living with incurable cancer means less new treatment coming through. That might extend my life when this treatment stops working. So that's how important these fundraising challenges are. And so for me, from a purely selfish viewpoint, the more I can raise, the more chance there is of a new drug coming along that will extend my life. And that actually for me means spending more time with my grandchildren. I've got 4 grandchildren now. I only had 1 when I was diagnosed. And yes, spending more time with them is absolutely my priority. And I've been given the gift of a longer life than I should have had because I was given a 2-year prognosis 5 years ago. So I am absolutely blessed and I'm making the most of being blessed.
And I know you put a lot of that down to the benefits of running, don't you?
Absolutely. I'm convinced. I mean, there was a recent paper release, which is only a small scale trial, but in the trial, it suggested that aerobic exercise for men with advanced stage prostate cancer slowed tumor progression. So I think that's actually now starting to evidence it. But I think the evidence now is overwhelming that exercise is good for cancer patients. Now it might not be running every day. I mean, I can do that and I've just done it. And it might not be doing a marathon a day like Gary can do, but it might be just doing sit to stand 10 times in the morning and 10 times in the afternoon, or some arm curls with a can of beans in each hand. Or just walking across the kitchen like that lady I mentioned before, because it's got a target at the end of it. The target is to get better, go further, improve your health and mental well-being.
Definitely. And I'm just thinking in terms of the various bits of running that you've done. For people who haven't listened to the first episode, before your diagnosis, you'd done all 6 marathon majors. You ran the Comrades Ultra. You've done those in some pretty quick times as well. Since then, you've done challenges, including a 2-day ultra. But I think at the time when we spoke before, you were talking about that this latest challenge was sort of shaping up to be the hardest. Is that how it turned out?
Yeah, I think because of it being so relentless, every day was really hard work. I mean, I would normally run 3 or 4 times a week as a rule. I've done a streak before, but when I did the streak last time, there were some days I just literally did a mile around the block to keep the streak going. Yeah. Well, this time it was at least 5K, so 3.1 miles. And my average was just under 4 miles. And I did a few 10K races during the year where I was pacemaker for one of the local running firms. And so yeah, it was really difficult, and I can't. It's impossible to describe how tough it felt. There were times where I just thought I actually can't do this, and I'd be out on the run thinking I'm not going to finish this, And the only thing that kept me going was being completely stubborn, bloody-minded, and determined, because I've got that in spades. What I've not got is the great health that I used to have when I was a sub-elite athlete, but I'm still doing my best to keep going.
And have you been? I haven't checked on Strava, or maybe should have checked. But have you been out running since you finished the challenge?
I finished on Tuesday, and I decided I was going to have a complete week away from exercise. So I've not even been tempted to go near a running shoe. They're all in the conservatory drying because we've had so much rain recently. They got soaked at various different runs. So, no, I'm going to go back to running on Tuesday next week because I'm one of the leaders at our club. And so I'll lead our slowest group because I can't keep up with anybody else nowadays. So I'll lead our slowest group. And then I'm going to try and run 3 or 4 times a week. And I've got a sort of aim in my mind. I'm not doing any more daft challenges because I just don't have the strength anymore. This one took a lot out of me. But my aim is I think I can still improve my 5K time a little bit compared to what I did during the course of the year. Couldn't really run very fast because I was so tired all the time from the relentlessness of the challenge. So I think I can get my 5K time down a bit, and I'd like to get it into the 26s, and I think there's an outside chance of the 25s, but that'll be going some. So yeah, I've still got some ambitions, but I don't have any great desire to do endurance stuff anymore.
Yeah, well, I can't blame you, Tony. I think you've probably done more than enough with all the various challenges that you've done. Just the one final question I wanted to ask you. It's probably the most important of them all, but how are you at the moment?
Yeah, I'm good. The big thing, of course, is it can change. I get my bloods tested every 12 weeks, and they monitor my PSA level. PSA stands for prostate specific antigen. Once that starts to rise, that means my treatment started to fail. And so far, it's remained steadfastly steady at 0, which is amazing because I started at 129 and it shouldn't have been any more than 4. And my next set of tests is the day before my birthday, which is wonderful, isn't it? 7th of February. And my birthday's the 8th of February, when I actually qualify for the travel pass as a pensioner. So yeah, I'm actually looking for. I've just filled in my application form for my travel pass, so I can actually get out and about on the metro free of charge. So yeah, it's amazing. Yeah.
Good stuff. Well, Tony, thank you very much for joining us again. Well done on the achievement, for busting that challenge, and for raising so much money for such a good cause.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for asking me to have a chat with you, and enjoy your running year, everybody.
Thank you for joining us this week on the Running Tales podcast. I hope you enjoyed Tony's fantastic story. If you still want to sponsor him for his efforts to run at least 5 kilometres every day in 2022, you can do at www.justgiving.com/fundraising/5K365 days. The 5 there is a number, so the number 5K and then the numbers 365 days. One last reminder to go and give us a rating now. 5 stars, please, for the Running Tales podcast, wherever you might listen. And also, you might perhaps be interested in this. I'm only doing what I'm capable of. If more people did what they were capable of, we'd live in a different world. Those are the words of Gary McKee, who we spoke to on this podcast and also for an article on our Substack page. Gary ran a marathon every day in 2022, and we spoke to him twice throughout the year. If you enjoyed those chats, if you enjoy the Running Tales podcast, then you will probably enjoy our newsletter and website at Substack. It contains a host of articles, including that one about Gary. You can subscribe to get full access to our newsletter sent direct to your inbox for just £5 per week. We also have 3 membership, which gives you access to weekly updates. Simply visit www.runningtales.substack.com to get even more from your Running Tales experience. See you next week.